Hello everyone and welcome back to a new episode of the Open College podcast series. My name is Oxana and on this episode joining me today is my colleague Fathima Sana Najeeb. So Fatima is a recruitment pro and today I'll be talking to her about interview skills and we're going to cover some of the basics that you need to know before going into your next big interview. So look, we hope this helps you. We hope you take something away from this and hopefully you secure a job from it. That's the whole point obviously. So without further ado, let's go.
I've been working with the Open College for over 8 months now as the resourcing and recruitment executive. My typical day at the college heavily involves reviewing CVs and applications that come our way for various positions in our team. Conducting interviews with the shortlisted candidates is another major responsibility that comes under my realm. And so, with my experience so far being on both sides of the interview process, I'm delighted to be sharing a few tips that might be helpful for those looking forward to be interviewed.
And so what would you say are some of the effective strategies that somebody can prepare in advance for an interview?
Yes. So whether you're fresh out of college or looking to make a career change, knowing how to ace an interview is essential in today's job market. Interview skills are really important as they can be the difference between landing your dream job or being passed over for someone else. A great resume might get you in the door, but it's your interview skills that will seal the deal. Now, preparing for an interview is crucial to ensuring that you make a good impression on your potential employer. One of the most important things you can do is research the company beforehand. Look up their mission statement, their values, and recent news articles to get a sense of what they're all about. This will help you tailor your responses during the interview to align with their goals and values. Now, another key aspect of preparing for an interview is practicing common interview questions. Think about the types of questions you're likely to be asked and come up with thoughtful, well-reasoned responses. Practice these responses out loud until you feel confident that you can articulate them clearly and concisely. Dressing for success is an essential part of making a good first impression during an interview. Your appearance can speak volumes about your professionalism and attention to detail, so it is really important to dress appropriately for the occasion. Now, when it comes to interview attire, it's always better to err on the side of caution and dress more formally than you think is necessary. Avoid anything too flashy or revealing, as this can be distracting and take away from your qualifications as a candidate. During the interview, it's important to actively listen to the interviewer's questions and respond thoughtfully. This shows that you're engaged in the conversation and genuinely interested in the position. Make sure to also ask thoughtful questions about the company and the role to demonstrate your curiosity and enthusiasm. Now, highlighting relevant experience is another key strategy for succeeding during the interview. Be prepared to provide specific examples of how your skills and experience align with the requirements of the job. This will help the interviewers see how you can add value to their team. One of the most challenging parts of any interview is handling difficult questions. These can range from questions about weaknesses or gaps in employment to more personal questions that might catch you off guard. The key to handling these questions is to be prepared and confident. Take some time before your interview to think about potential questions that might come up and practice your responses. Remember, it is okay to take a moment to gather your thoughts before answering a difficult question. Also, the key to success in any interview is preparation and practice. By taking the time to research the company, practicing common interview questions, and developing a confident and professional demeanor, you can give yourself the best possible chance of landing a dream job.
One of the things I noticed that you said there a couple of times was about preparing questions that the interviewers might ask you. There's a good few websites out there, I actually think, like Monster sometimes gives you a good list of things that could be asked. Now, it's not an indefinite, list of questions, obviously, but it gives you an idea and then you can tailor it. And then another one, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think ChatGPT might even be helpful. You can give it a prompt to,
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are many websites as well that give you, prompt responses that you can refer to before preparing for attending an interview. Yeah, it's really helpful to have those in handy as well.
Or even I find like they have, Glassdoor.ie or anything like that, or .com, whatever it's called. Sometimes they tell you from previous candidates, they tell you the kind of questions that are asked in interviews. So it might not even be a bad idea to have a little peek on them just to get an idea what questions
exactly, it really helps in the preparation process. So you're not very nervous when you start off the interview as well. It helps you keep a calm composure as well.
Yeah, exactly. Just yeah, exactly. You feel a little bit more ready. And
Yeah,
then what are some of the most common mistakes that people usually make during interviews? So obviously they're ready, but sometimes nerves take over and you do make mistakes.
exactly. Oh
Everybody's
yeah,
only
yeah.
human.
During an interview, what you say and how you say can help an interviewer determine if you are a strong candidate and a good fit for their company and culture. Now, you can prepare for an interview by thinking carefully about the things you want to make sure are covered and what you do not want to say, which is very important. Now, anything negative about a previous employer or a job, the interviewer may ask you a question like, why are you looking for a new job? Or what didn't you like about your previous position? Answering in a manner that avoids saying anything negative about your previous employer or job can show your ability to remain professional and positive regardless of the situation. Now, positive answers can also give the interviewer confidence that you will be a good addition to their company's culture and that you probably wouldn't say anything negative about them in the future either. Now, when answering questions about your previous employer, try to focus on things the position you are applying for offers that your previous employer wasn't able to do. Now, the second thing that you have to avoid is I do not know. The interviewer may ask you a question that you didn't prepare for or that you don't have the answer to. This can be a great opportunity for you to prove your critical thinking and problem solving skills. You can try telling the interviewer you need a minute to think about your response or ask them for the additional information you need to put together an accurate response. So you can say something like, that's a great question. If you don't mind, I would like to take a minute to think about it. There's nothing wrong in asking things like these. The third thing that you should avoid asking is discussing about benefits, vacation, and pay. Now, an interview is when you want to focus on portraying why you are the best candidate for the position and motivating the interviewer or the employer to make you a job offer. You should try to avoid asking about benefits, vacation time, and pay unless these topics are first brought up by the interviewer. Instead, try to wait until they give you a job offer before you begin negotiations. Instead of explicitly asking about benefits, vacation, or pay, you can mention this conversation toward the end of the interview. This politely lets the interviewer know you still have questions about the benefits the position has to offer, but doesn't pressure them to answer those questions right away. So I would suggest, going something like, I look forward to hearing more about the benefits and compensations during our next conversation. That's something that looks very impressive in the eyes of an interviewer. Now,
Yeah.
the fourth question that you should avoid is, when an interviewer goes like asking a question, probably something to do with your qualification or your experience, and you say like, oh, the information is already there on my resume. See, while the answer to the interviewer's question may very well be written on your resume, you should always try to answer it in your own words and provide them with more details. Now, when you answer to a question, when you answer to a question that it's already there on my resume, it's likely the interviewer is simply looking for further information. He has already reviewed the CV and he's already seen that bit of information, but he's looking for more details. Try to answer these questions by using specific examples that prove your experience or skills and explain how your qualifications are relevant to the position. Now, something you should avoid is unprofessional language. It is very important to display your professionalism during the interview. One of the best ways you can do this is to use professional language. This doesn't mean you need to use industry jargon, but rather you should try to avoid unprofessional language, including slangs, profanity, and filler words like, like or and things like that. You're less likely to use unprofessional language during an interview when you slow down, take your time to think about your response, and focus on speaking clearly. You can also avoid using filler words by practicing replacing them with a brief pause or a deep breath. Now, just as I mentioned before, saying, I do not have any questions at the end of the interview. Most interviewers will ask if you have any questions near the end of the interview. An important part of preparing for an interview is to think about meaningful questions you can ask the employer that will show your interest in the company or the position. Next one would be asking what the company does. While you want to make sure you have questions for the interviewer, you should try to avoid questions about what the company does. Answers to this question can usually be found easily by researching the company website and the position you're applying to. Try to have a clear understanding of the company's vision statement, mission, and what they do to achieve them before your interview. Doing this will allow you to ask more detailed questions about the company, something that's not there on their website. Another thing that you should avoid is overly prepared answers or cliches. One of the best ways to prepare for an interview is to research questions you expect the interviewer to ask and put together answers. However, when using prepared answers during an interview, you want to make sure the answer sounds genuine. Many candidates use cliches when answering common interview questions. Now, during your interview, try to choose an answer that is honest and will make you stand out as a candidate. Instead of saying, my greatest weakness is that I'm a perfectionist, which interviewers often hear, try to identify an experience you were able to learn from in your previous position. Next thing that you should be careful is discussing about your lack of experience. Now, if you're a recent graduate or you're changing careers, try to focus on the strengths you will bring to the position and how the experience and skills you do have will add value to the company rather than focusing on any weaknesses or lack of experience. So when answering questions about relevant experience, make sure you mention transferable skills that will be beneficial to the role, such as strong communication, organizational skills, problem solving, time management skills, and so on. The last one I would say would be sharing irrelevant personal information. Now, when answering the interview questions, using specific examples and anecdotes can help you prove your qualifications and stand out to the interviewer. However, it is important to ensure the impression you're leaving with the interviewer is memorable for the right reasons. You should try to avoid using details about your personal life, such as information about your family or hobbies, unless the information is directly relevant to the position. So yeah, these are a couple of things that you should be aware of. And
I know what you mean when they're asking all these questions. You mentioned there, avoid asking what the company does. I think that's the worst one you could possibly ask, because why would you be applying in the first place if you don't know what you're applying for?
Exactly,
I think that's the worst.
What the company does, and exactly, things like, what sector is this company focused on, and what industry is this? It really puts off the interviewer.
100%. Okay, so what way would it be best then to handle any kind of unexpected questions?
See, I understand that the uncertainty about what questions to expect is one of the main reasons candidates feel nervous about their upcoming interview. The good news is that there are a number of things you can do to handle this uncertainty. So one way I would suggest is to prepare the obvious. See, about 80% of the interviewer's questions are usually directly connected to the job description and your background. So think of the job description as the employer's wish list. Now, while they are aware that they most likely will not find a candidate who meets all the criteria, they still want to gauge how qualified each interviewee is. That might sound obvious, but I can tell from my own experience as a hiring manager that many candidates struggle to give convincing answers, not because they don't fulfill the requirements, but because they haven't prepared for these questions the right way. To avoid ending up in a similar situation, start by listing all the skills, qualification, and experience mentioned in the job description and identify examples where you demonstrated these in your previous roles. Then put yourself into the interviewer's shoes and try to anticipate 2 to 3 questions they could ask you for each item on your list and prepare your answers. Now, for example, let's say you applied as a management consultant and the job description states that the successful candidate has a proven track record of helping clients achieve business improvements. Now, in this case, you want to add help clients achieve business improvements to your list and prepare an example where you successfully have done this. Then you identify and prepare answers to a few questions that the interviewer could ask to assess your skills in more detail. For instance, they could ask you about a time you came up with an innovative solution to solve a customer's problem, or a past customer interaction you wish you had done differently. Another technique I would suggest is to dismantle the question. The secret to handling questions during an interview that you have not prepared an answer for is to understand the reason behind the question before replying. Now, most likely, the question addresses one of the points you already have identified when analyzing the job description, while preparing for the interview. And often you can even use one of the answers you already have prepared. For instance, just like as I said in the previous example, the interviewer might say, "Tell me about a time a customer asked you for something that didn't address their needs." Asking yourself, what part of the job description do they want to address with this, might help you realize that they probably want to check if helping clients achieve business improvements is your priority. Now, once you know that, you can quickly evaluate if you can use one of the answers you prepared while reviewing the job description. Now, in this case, maybe you can use the example where you came up with an innovative solution to a customer's problem if the client first suggested something else, but you convinced them that your solution better addressed their needs. Now, another technique that candidates can also use is refocusing the question. So if the question you are asked is neither one that you have prepared an answer for, nor one that can be addressed by dismantling the question, you can use a strategy that refocuses the question. It works especially well when asked about your opinion or any hypothetical questions on how you would do certain things if you got the job. So instead of trying to make something up that might not be thought through, you rephrase the question mentally into a problem-solving one and then develop your answer loudly. For instance, just by taking the example that we've used previously, the interviewer might ask you what your dream customer would be if you got the job. Now, if you haven't thought about this, you could rephrase the question mentally towards, how would I determine who my dream customer is? And then reply accordingly. Yeah, that's a good question. I like solving challenging problems and making an impact with my work. Since many of today's largest challenges are energy related, I would probably want to work with one of your firm's energy clients. I have a long background within innovation management, so a company that recently started innovation initiatives would probably benefit most from my skills. So this is something, this is a template that you can probably use when answering such questions, when you refocus the question, yeah?
Okay.
And
so, oh, sorry, you have more. Sorry, go ahead.
You just, to end this on a very important aspect of practicing this, yeah? So, like with all the skills, the key to success is practicing. So brief a friend on the job you applied for, the skills, the qualification, the experience needed to succeed in the role, and details about the company. So do not provide them with the questions you already prepared answers for. Ask them to prepare 5 to 10 questions they would ask if they were a hiring manager, and conduct a 5-minute mock interview with you. Afterward, discuss what went well and what could be improved. So this is something that I would suggest when an unexpected question has come across.
So obviously we've talked a lot there about verbal communication and how best to answer questions, but also a large part of human communication is body language. So what would be important when it comes to body language during an interview?
Regarding body language, see, candidates who dress informally or display poor body language can come across as disconnected, disengaged, and sometimes even a bit disrespectful. Now, take the situation. It is important to take the situation seriously so that the interviewer will consider you seriously, because body language sends a very strong message. So dress for the job you want. Keep your body language professional. It's definitely not a time for you to feel like you're at home, even if you are at home, as in cases of virtual interviews. If you find yourself starting to lean back in your chair, relaxing your arms, or worse, putting your arms behind your head or your feet up, seriously don't do that. You obviously want to feel comfortable throughout your entire interview, but you should still keep an upright position. Leaning in slightly when answering to show that you're actively listening and that you're truly enthusiastic about the opportunity. Your interviewer will see that you are interested in what they have to say. Now, speaking about a few body language tips, it's not a bad idea to practice some of these subtle physical expressions. So grab a mirror or record yourself on your phone and get comfortable with smiling with your eyes too. And keep a pleasant, neutral, warm physical demeanor. Don't feel like you need to plaster a big smile the entire time. Just take a breath and be your best self. So in short, dress the part and show professionalism in your posture. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And then to go back to the verbal communication, I suppose, is just something I should have asked earlier, but I forgot to. But is there any questions in particular that candidates should ask at the end of an interview?
So as you near the last 5 to 10 minutes of the interview, expect to be asked, what questions do you have of me? Be prepared to and save at least 2 or 3 questions for the end of the interview. Now, some of you might have already been asking questions throughout the way. So when you get to this part of the interview, you don't have anything left, don't worry. Start by saying, thank you for answering my questions all along the way. Let me think about that for a moment. Now, consider what information am I missing if I am to start the job tomorrow? Or you can also ask yourself, what information do I need to really determine whether or not this company and this role is going to be a good fit for me? So some great questions that you can ask at the interview, at the end of an interview are, does your company have an employee resource groups? How do you promote diversity and inclusion at this company? Could you enlighten me with the career progression opportunities at this company? Or something I would suggest is, what is your favorite part about working here? Now, this is a great question to ask before, because it allows the interviewer to talk about themselves in relation to a really positive experience that they've had at work. And this sets you up to end with the interviewer having a really positive feeling in association with your interview. So once they've answered all of your questions, be sure to thank the interviewer for their time and ask about next steps. They may set up the next round of interviews on the spot. Or they may also say that they're going to get back to you later. Whatever the case is, be sure to ask for best processes for following up later. So when the interviewer asks, do you have any questions for us? Please do not say no. I, I think you've already answered everything for me. I think I'm good. No, you do have questions. You always should have questions. And I think a lot of people think, oh, okay, so my question will be, yeah, I do have a question. What's the next step in this process? Now, that's a fine question you can ask, but it shouldn't be your only question. Also, I always recommend coming up with more than those, because sometimes they answer that before they ask if you have questions. So they finish your part of the interview and they say, okay, well, the next steps in this process are this, this, and this. But before we go, do you have any questions for us? And if your only question was, what are the next steps? Now we are scrambling about what questions do I have and what am I going to ask them? So it's always best you keep a couple of questions ready, all right. Now, ask questions you genuinely have. So when you're preparing for the interview, jot down some questions you have. What are the concerns you have for this position? What do you really want to know? But you want to ask questions that are also showing that you're looking to success in this position if you got it, So if you want to be kind of a forward thinking in your questions around the culture of the company, people's past successes and challenges in the department all tend to do well. Now, for me, one question I really like is a culture question, like, tell me about a typical day in this position, or what does a work week look like here in the company? So you learn about what it's like, to work there. And it shows that you have interest in what they do, but you're also getting information so you can see, can I picture myself in this environment there? You also can ask questions that show that you're already thinking of what it would take to be successful in this position. So those could be a couple of things like, what is it that you would like someone in this position to accomplish in the first 90 days? Or what is the one trait that you see in people that makes them really successful in this position? Another one I like is how a past employee has been successful in this position. You can also ask about challenges of this position and shows that you're not afraid of any potential challenge, as you're already trying to figure out, how am I going to do well here? How can I do my best for the company? So bear in mind, always best to have at least 3 questions ready, because inevitably one will most probably be answered for you during the interview. So I try to have one that is success driven, one that's culture related, and one that is aimed to connect with the interviewer, as in, asking the interviewer's favorite part of the company and things like that.
Yeah, no, they're very good. And I kind of think, now, this is maybe just me, but I remember when I was first out of college and I graduated, I didn't care about culture. I didn't care about success. I just wanted to get my foot in the door and start working. And I think maybe people who are listening who are in that same position, I suppose, like graduates or entry level, they just want to get their foot in the door and start working and earning a living. They might not care too much, but I think it's something that they really need to consider. Or even people who are, maybe they were not entry level, but they're taking the next step forward, because even though the point I'm trying to make is at entry level, you don't care. But once you're in the door, you don't realize how quickly you do start to care, because a toxic work environment or a poor manager or a culture you don't agree with become very important very quickly. So it's something to really consider and talk about at the start. But I don't know, what do you think? Like, take it with a pinch of salt, because everybody's going to want to sell their company in a positive way, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, it's always recommended to ask, inquire about the culture of the company. It will also help the candidate to know, what kind of an employee am I interviewing with, and if in case I succeed, I'm approached with a successful interview outcome,
Mm.
that there is no apprehension or anxiety as to, what I mean, is the role the right fit for me? Is the company a good fit for me? But the interviewee itself is prepared, because the questions have all very very well been answered in the end of the interview, and they are very well prepared as well. So which also keeps them more calm and composed as well, and it really helps a great deal for the candidates.
Yeah. Okay, so then, you've learned off all the answers to all your questions, you've dressed the best, and the interview's now over. So, how important would be following up after an interview? Because you always hear that people saying, "Oh, follow up after the interview." Is that something that
Yeah.
you just do, or is it actually important?
Um, no interview is actually complete until you follow up with a thank you note. So express your appreciation for the interview. And if it is true, you can reaffirm your interest as well. Now, this last step can truly make a difference. Moreover, it shows your interest and enthusiasm to work with the company. So I would suggest to follow up the interview with a thank you email. Thank the interviewer or the interviewers for their time, mention something from the interview, and use this message as an extra opportunity to market yourself and your skills. Also, another important thing is candidates should not expect that the employer will necessarily remember to respond, or that they will respond in a timely manner, even if a date for a response was indicated in the interview. So take it upon yourself to politely inquire after a week's time to ascertain the status of your candidacy.
Okay. And is there anything? I think actually that's it. I was going to say, is there anything else? But is there anything that we haven't covered, that you might want to
Um,
bring to light? Something that I haven't asked?
um, just that, I would always suggest having a reliable pen and a small notepad with you. I mean, do not take
Yeah.
notes during the interview. However, immediately afterward, write down as much as you can remember, including your
Hmm.
impression of how well you did. This really helps throughout the interview preparation process. Another important thing, always tell the truth, because lies and exaggeration will most definitely come back to haunt you if you succeed in the interview and it's considered for the next stages. Yes, these
Yeah.
are the,
You don't want to say you
yeah,
speak a language you don't speak, and then later on they're like, "Oh, can you help
yeah,
us with this client?"
yeah,
You're stuck.
definitely scary.
Yeah, I'd say so. Okay, that's great, Fatima. That was a load of great tips for people who are prepping for interviews, or maybe they just need a little bit of help, a little bit more helpful hints. Now, we have a workshop coming up with yourself that's going to be on the 27th of July.
Yes.
I have that on our social media, so if anybody interested, do go to our social media. We're the Open College across the board everywhere, and follow the instructions on that to sign up for the workshop that Fatima is doing. It'll be on interview skills, so tying in nicely. Um,
Yeah,
so
I hope to have a good crowd on the workshop. Yeah.
yeah, we did. We had a great crowd for your CV writing one, so
Yes.
it'll be a good one. There's a good few people that have signed up already, and places are going fast. So do sign up if you're interested. Alrighty,
All
Fatima, that's
right.
great. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much, Oksana. It was lovely having a chat with you.
And with that comes the end of another episode of our podcast. I'd like to thank you all for always listening, and I hope you come back for the next episode. As always, I hope you learned something new from this one, just enough to land you that job that you wanted at least. So until next time, see you then.